You're listening to Natural AF, the podcast exposing suppressed truths about health, reality, and human potential. I'm your host, Isaac. I'm the founder of Natural Art Form, and I'm joined by my wife and co-host, Alexa, a Site K facilitator and human design coach. Together, we explore a wide range of topics that encourage others to be bold and embody who they truly are, while staying grounded in our lives, relationships, and deepest purpose. We bring some pretty unconventional perspectives and solutions to the table, so if you're ready to challenge the status quo and have a few laughs along the way, you're in the right place. Thanks for joining us. Let's get Natural AF. Welcome back, everybody, Natural AF, and this is going to be an episode right up our alley. We've got herbalist Kyle Denton in the house. Welcome, brother.
Hey, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite and looking forward to talk to you.
Yes, so glad Chance connected us because it is definitely right up our alley. We've had a few conversations around the time actually we were booking you because Isaac's always in the kitchen tinkering with herbs and plants and always finding different plants that grow around here. And there's been a few things that have come up like, we got to ask Kyle about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. You would be like a kid in a playground here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love learning new plants and being in new bioregions, but also seeing some of the familiarities that you just find when you recognize things in the plant world, from the ways that you can observe things from the doctrine of signatures, or you just get a feel for it, you know?
Yeah.
Patterns are, they're endless.
For sure.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to introduce you with your very well esteemed bio. So Kyle Denton is a Wisconsin-based community herbalist, medicine maker, herb shop owner, plant path facilitator, clinician, and coherency theurgist devoted to nature's healing virtues. As founder of Tippecanoe Herbs, Root Radical Herbal Academy, and the Resonature podcast, his work blends traditional Western herbalism, Ayurveda, and the mythopoetic stories that describe the vital force. Kyle sees every person as a unique individual expression of the Creator, each with a personal story of health and prosperity. Innovating with sound diagnostics, he pioneers Sonic Bloom, herbal tonics harmonizing wellness with vibrational precision. Beyond the clinic and herb shop, he wanders wild spaces, gathering inspiration and wild medicine. Yet his heart's highest calling is as a father and husband, nurturing his family with the same plant-powered passion that fuels his work. What an introduction.
You did a good job reading that. That was great. That's a lot of...
Yeah, a lot of new words. Lucky I practiced beforehand.
Yeah, thank you.
So many fascinating things that you're doing, especially with the sound stuff. But before we get into that, we'd love to know, like, how did you get into herbalism? Was it something that you were just always drawn to, or did you have any particular experiences that sort of led you down that path?
You know, there definitely was. But pretty much every herbalist that I know has a memory of maybe the calling starting when they were a kid and, being the one that's the hippie that likes the flowers. For me, I was like, baseball, soccer, right field. Here's the guy picking up the daisies and here's the goalie not having to move anywhere, picking up the dandelions. So that kind of thing. But there was a time where I was actually riding my bike home from work and trying to get home as fast as I could so that I could get to a concert later that night. I was playing guitar for my band, and I ended up getting struck by a car and got messed up pretty bad, broke my collarbone, but this is my right collarbone. I went on to play that night. So all I had to do was put the guitar over me, and I was like, oh, okay, this is how my arm would be slung like in a sling anyway. So I just kind of played. And then the next day after that, we had like this cheeky wedding band that we were playing for one of my friend's weddings. It was a Neil Diamond cover band. It was just like cheesy. It was really fun.
It's just like a wedding singer or something.
It's exactly. It's funny because they just made a movie about this like Neil Diamond cover band out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is like where me and my friends were from. We're like, wait a minute, how come nobody asked us? We're the ones that.
How many Neil Diamond cover bands are there in Wisconsin?
I don't know.
More than two, I'm guessing.
We only play. Yeah, it was just a cheeky thing. Like we were just
cool.
Silly. But anyway, and then the next day after that, we went for my band went for a tour, and we were gone for 3 weeks, and it was like rock and roll, not taking care of ourselves, and I ended up like putting off my healing at the detriment of my health, and so I recognized that pattern going on, and I ended up joining an Ayurveda program. And in the program, the first day of the program, I ended up joining Ayurveda because my wife learned a type of massage work in Ayurveda called Panchakarma, and she was like, "Hey, you should learn this stuff." And there's a school in your town, and I was like, "Wow, cool!" It's actually a well-esteemed school for the country as far as Ayurveda goes, the science from India. And the teacher asked us in the first day, at the first moment, we were all in a circle. She said, "What is your path that brought you here?" And so I got to reflect on that, while the students were going around, and I thought, yeah, you know what kind of put me here was that car accident, knocked me off my bike. It really put me on this path. And then as it was getting closer to me, I thought, when did that happened about a year ago? That happened a year ago today. And then as it got to me, I recognized, I was like, that's coming up to the exact minute of the day a year ago. And so it landed on me, and boom, it was just like, it just like happened, and it was really cool. I mean, coincidences like that happen a lot, but being asked to reflect on what it was that put you here and recognizing that, synchronicity, I was like, okay, I think this is a calling. I think I really was supposed to get my bike all bent out of shape and me flip over the car and stuff. And so since then I learned Ayurveda, and which is a really fundamental was really fundamental for my clinical skills and clinical assessment, and recognizing that, there are many facets to healthy living that are beyond herbalism, but it really was the plants within that. So within Ayurveda, there's, the Panchakarma or the massage work, and then there's diet and recognition of seasons and so on, and even astrology and everything like that. But there's also the herbalism factor. And within that, I really longed for more, because the way that the plants were introduced to me were as plants that were powdered. They had just been sitting on a shelf somewhere. There was no relationship to the life force of the living plant, not even a picture. And it was like some funny names, some Sanskrit names that I didn't have a connection with, etymologically, which I learned later. But so I took that longing and the foundation, which is, basically simple elemental system of, in Ayurveda, they call it doshas, which are just like elements, earth, air, fire, water, basically, and ether. And then found that and transposed it onto Western herbalism, and also found the same relationships within Western herbalism. Western herbalism also has elements that also, bases its study on the seasons and everything like that. So applying some crossover, and then I was making formulas for the people that I was working with clinically as a young clinician, and not really knowing what I was doing, but like really drawn to like, I want to make this. And as a way of maybe like knowing that I could get the quality better than what I would recommend. And after I started doing that for a while, I was like, I really like making stuff. This is fun. And I opened up a little farmer's market stand, and that was like so much fun for me, having, feedback and having people come back and tell me what they really liked about something, or like passing on something and then picking them up and be like, it doesn't smell good or something. And then walking away and be like, okay, how can I improve these things? And getting a lot of feedback from people, and also just my presence with the medicine too. There's another thing that I've realized over time is that there's a million people in this world that are making, rose petal tincture, but there's something about the personality or the essence of the person. And you've done this before, Isaac, in medicine making, that people will just approach you for your thing, even if it might be the same other stuff, that a lot of other people have. Yeah. So there's something about the essence of the person that's, in the process of making it. And I really like to explore that. That's something I really wanted to do. And so I ended up making more and more farmers markets, the next year. And after that, I just was like, let's open a shop. And me and my wife, who's been basically the biggest behind the scenes scene that you could think of. I'm usually the pretty face, I like to joke, even though she's much more beautiful, and and organized and artistic and everything like that. But she always jokes that I'm the hippie wizard that puts the potions in the bottle, and she's the one that like remembers to label it, and and makes the nice labels and everything like that. And so together we opened a shop, and for our shop we We've manufactured our own stuff inside. We have a little cafe that's like foraged cafe that one of my friends, Marky, really goes above and beyond to like make some really fun, fancy drinks, which is just a cool thing. And then that's where I also have my school. I teach all the stuff that I do. I take people out on a la carte kind of classes with herb walks where we just go out for a couple hours and talk about the relationships and the myth and the stories and the medicine of what we come across. Very non-linear, like, oh, look at this weed that we have here, or something like that. And and then I also have my clinic there too. So it's like kind of all combined, this big old pie that I can just put my finger in many different pieces of it throughout the day. And it's really fun that way. And it keeps me on my toes, and it keeps my interest up. And it also helps my interest, which is like working with plants, working with people, working with my hands. And that's kind of the story, and that's how it's evolved, and that's where it's going. And I've always liked the idea of quality over quantity. You know, many opportunities along the last over decade to scale things up to Amazon and beyond. You know, but I get to have a place where I have two little kids that they get to come to the shop and they get to be with me, and we get to hang out, and I get to actually manufacture and grow the plants and do things small, and that's really the way that I like it. And so there's times that I can't offer things, you know, and I don't have the opportunities, and I pass up, you know, bigger, you know, opportunities for income or something like that at the, you know, recognizing that this is really what I love, just being an herbalist, being a dad, being a husband, and putting it all together in one big thing, you know?
Yeah. That's like the perfect storm of all the things. And shout out to your wife. I know with Alexa and I, like, I'm the mad scientist in the kitchen making a mess. And then, you know, we go to the markets, we do stalls, and then she makes it look good and makes it presentable, and like, keeps track of everything. And
we're such kindred spirits, because that's literally the relationship Isaac and I have with Natural Art Form, where it's funny sometimes, because sometimes, you know, we'll do markets separately, and so people will come up and go, oh, do you make the product? And I'm like, absolutely not. I wouldn't do a very good job. So I was like, that's all Isaac, that's all my husband. And I kind of do everything else, like all the back end stuff, all the booking of the markets, and you know, wholesale orders.
The spelling of words on the labels and everything.
It's beautiful because as a partner, you know, with a partnership with your husband and your wife, like, you see the vision of what you want to do together. And so you could be a great representative, just like as I was mentioning, like the essence that goes into the creation is bigger than just, you know, Isaac or Kyle, you know, my hands in it. And that's why it's really fun for me, and probably you too, Isaac, to like have somebody approach the market stand when you're both standing right next to each other, and just look at Alexa, you know, and just talk to Alexa, and like she might look over at you to like get a couple answers or something like that. But really, that's kind of the thing I was talking about, is that it really does have that personality within it.
Yeah,
100%. I actually love that you mentioned that, because we do a lot of different markets, and so we also get the opportunity to meet a lot of people that, you know, we're buying the things that they make, and that really does make all the difference. Because I've definitely been to places like Isaac's like, oh, I've seen this stall, like we should get something from there, and I've gone over, and like the person there, like, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with them, but sometimes you just get like a weird vibe, and I'm just like, nah, I'm not really feeling, like, I don't know, there's something about their energy where I'm just like, I don't know, I don't feel very drawn to like buying their stuff. But then we've met so many amazing people that like, same as what you explained, like they just love what they do, and you can tell. And that's when that love is put into the products that they make. There's something about that, not only that draws you to the products, but even just using the products. Like we've bought so many, I mean, we do a lot. We always say like we do probably, I don't know, 80% of our shopping now from markets, because we love that. We love that experience of buying things from the people that actually make it, and they love what they do. It's so different.
Enough we get to do that year round. I don't know. Do they have indoor farmers markets where you're at? Like, there's enough people still buying. They want the fresh stuff off the farm.
I'm in Wisconsin, so we have a winter farmers market. That was my jam, because as an herbalist, like I'm selling teas and I'm selling things that people will try to, you know, are more inclined to pick up when the season's like, when they're not feeling so good, or they feel like they need a little support. And and then also the outdoor farmers markets, which are great because you're, working outside, setting up early, you're getting done with work by noon or something like that. And what you were it just reminded me of what you were just talking about, Alexa, is the word enthusiasm, like the enthusiasm that people have for their stuff. That means that means infused with God, like theos, like the aspect of being one with God, or having God come into, like the Holy Spirit in your place or something like that, however you want to say it. But that's what enthusiasm literally means. And so having that, whatever divine spark or something where people feel like they're like, doing something more than themselves, to make something better just for the sake of helping other people out or that type of thing. That's what enthusiasm is.
Do you ever get so we're kind of in a little bit of a psychic highway, I would say, down here, and we get some people, like pretty commonly, a couple of markets where they'll come up and they're one lady's really into there's like an Egyptian healing method, like energetic modality similar to Reiki, but it's a little bit different, like color therapy and other things. But they'll come up with their pendants, or what do they call them? Pendulums. And they'll test our products, and we get like a lot of people are like, wow, this is like, it's really spinning, and like there's just a lot of good energy going.
Yeah. Well, we've had a friend of ours who I don't know if I'd say she's psychic or if she says that about herself, but she's just very like, she actually does Reiki and a lot of energy healing, so very tapped into energy. And one day she was she sells our products in her clinic, and she was just holding the jar of Alleviate, and she said, I just got this image of you two in the kitchen laughing, and there was just lots of joy. And I said to her, that is so wild, because we're always in the kitchen laughing together, like whether I'm cooking or whether he's making products. So, and she picked up on that energy, and that's what she was just like, I just got such a beautiful, warm feeling like holding this jar. So it definitely carries through for sure.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it does. And I recognize that too, as, somebody who hired, employs other people, that I like to keep that vibe in my commercial space too, like making sure that we're not gossiping about, the latest whatever psyop or whatever, and just getting into a place where we're offering solutions and compassion and love, because the things that we are around do carry that energy, and I also think that when you're creating something such as medicine, it really does hold that that patterning. So that's really interesting, because when you said that about the pendulums, it reminded me about some people that I've had at markets that come up with the pendulums too. Yeah. And I'm like watching it, like kind of nervously, like, is it going to spin right? And so there's this one guy, he's passed on now, but he used to come up with a pendulum, and he would, he would muscle test things with the pendulum. Mm-hmm. And he picked up this product that he had been picking up over and over every week. And it was a tincture of chaga and reishi that I had made. It was a double extraction of these two medicinal mushrooms. And it was the same batch. But he came up to it, and the pendulum was just like flat, and just didn't do anything. He goes, is this a new batch, or is this a new, what's going on with this one? And I said, I thought to myself, I'm just going to do a little trick here. Let's just see if it works. And I said, yes, I think it is. Hold on. Let me go under my table here and swap it out for the one of the original batch. But really, I just held it under the table, and I said this little prayer that I say inside of my head, inside of my heart, when I'm making medicine while holding the bottle, which is something along the lines of, may all of it's a Sanskrit prayer, but it's, may all of the negative energy and black magic that has ever been associated with this be dissolved. May all the hands that have come in contact with these plants be blessed. And may this remedy find and nourish the person that it's supposed to heal. Something like that. And then I put it back out, and got the pendulum back out. It was like going super fast, but it was the same thing. Yeah. But it was just infused with that new prayer, and it's kind of funny because I know that I did that originally too. So I wonder if there's a statute of limitations on these things, or if, it'd just been in the market crate for a long time and, didn't get out with its friends or something like that. It's kind of funny. And
that's so interesting.
Yeah, they're alive. It's incredible. It was probably just like lonely. He's like, no one's bought me yet in a while. Like,
Yeah.
People, like, especially at markets, like you have lots of people coming through, and just the people that's coming into contact with, and like, almost leaving like an energetic imprint on it or something. Like, that's super fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or if they have dogs allowed at the market, they might leave a different kind of imprint on your table.
That happens sometimes.
my signs. I need a little A-frame signs. I have a wooden one that I made myself, and I burned it really nicely and sanded it and all this stuff. And then, dogs. It's like the email. Like they just come up and check their email, then like pee on it.
I'd love to that point. I'd love to because something you said earlier reminded me of this too. And because I studied nutrition, and I did holistic nutrition, oh God, almost a decade ago now. But I learned a little bit we do a little bit of Ayurveda, a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine, and a little bit of the traditional European medicine. I don't even know what they called it, but the four humors. And anyway, loved that stuff, because I love learning about the energetics of food and all of that. It was like, they were all my favorite subjects. And, quite often, like you see, especially now, like a lot of people have become more health conscious. And I use that term very loosely, because what a lot of people consider health conscious is like like, I was actually thinking about this yesterday. How I considered myself to be health conscious about 10, 15 years ago is like so different now. I'm like, it's on a different level now. And so you see a lot of these, greens powders and like all of these, sort of, plant-based foods that are very far from, what you find in nature. And even with teas, I wanted to ask you, like, because obviously you make them, like, what's the main difference, like, for people that are just like buying tea from the supermarket, even if it's organic, like, what are the main differences? And whether you want to speak to like the energetics or the processing or whatever, like the way you see it, like when you're buying something that's just like mass produced, even if it is quote unquote healthy, or, things like teas and stuff, versus buying it from someone that's actually making like a loose leaf blend that you're buying from the person that makes it.
Yeah, considering that, what we just were talking about, like the energetic environment is like probably one of the biggest things that we can't actually measure, but we know it to be true. Some other things, like when it comes to tea, like for example, I've only found one tea bag on the market, a single one company that makes, and I don't even think they bag their teas in it, but they use a hemp biodegradable, all organic, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Yeah. All the other tea bags that you're going to find out there are going to have some sort of microplastic or thing in it, even if it's a staple or something. I don't know.
Glue.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. There might be some glue. There might be something. And so now all of a sudden you're behind the eight ball. When I make tea, I make it with loose leaf, and then I expect whoever's purchasing it to figure it out, like put it into a tea ball, put it into a pot of tea, a teapot or something like that. It's really not that hard. And I like to think, since we were just talking about like one product feeling like a little lone, I actually think that when the plants go into the water, they like to like swim around, and they're like, oh, this is great. And when they're in a tea bag being dunked in there, it's kind of like a tourist in a shark tank or something like that. They're like, oh, cool. We can see
this isn't fun.
We can see the water.
I had someone gift me this tea that was like a flower, and you put it in the pot, and then it just opens up.
That's super cool, super artistic and special. Those are really cool. And those things are made, like, the idea with tea, and then going back to like, the qualities of tea, is you can recognize if something is good, like quality herbal wise, if it has a sensory experience to it. And so there's some plants like chamomile that you can like dustify into powder, put them into your little glue microplastic tea bags, put them on the Celestial Seasonings market line or something like that.
Shots fired.
Right. Or so, like whatever, a grocery store brand where people have to like put on beard nets and like punch it in their punch card and bring their little lunchbox to work and then leave. And then it could go on a truck and then go on a market, or a grocery store, and it could sit there on the shelf for like 2-3 years, and it will still taste like chamomile. But that's a very, very exceptional plant. There's some other plants like thyme, which are really, really strong, or mint, which are really strong, that are also going to kind of carry that over years. But most of the time, plants wear out their oomph, their vital force, their life force after just a short amount of time, 6 months to a year. And so it's incumbent on the apothecarist, or the person who's making their medicine cabinet, to consume the teas, which we could call medicine, but we could also call it just like ritualistic food, or the thing that you drink after dinner or after lunch or whatever, and reduce that supply and then get it again the next year, because that's what nature's doing. It's growing back again. And so what's the point in hoarding it? And also, what's the point in kind of crappy, cheap tea when you can get something that's made from a local source, or that's including local herbs? Like, that's something that I like to do. I don't do that for every plant. I mean, I'm in Wisconsin. We don't have ginger. We don't have cinnamon. I got to get these places from other places like that. But as much as I can grow, as much as I can forage, as much as I can support other farmers to provide, that's what we're going to do. And I actually think that there's a huge, huge difference in quality tasting a tea from something like that. Even just the lemon balm that you grow outside your door and dry and let that sit, versus the stuff that you have at the store, even the best brands, because they go through that process. And so, that said, when the people on the airplane are going around with their little carts or whatever, and they offer you a tea, like, you could also just accept it and bless it and enjoy it. You don't have to be so idealistic. And that maybe that goes to your point too, Alexa, which is, when it comes to health conscious things, I think one of the traps that a lot of people fall into is the idealism of, oh no, I'm drinking a microplastic tea bag. Oh, my balls are going to totally shrink up. No, I don't think so. I think
no, they're probably going to grow because that plastic doesn't leave.
Yeah.
Just makes it bigger. No.
Yeah, or who cares? Like, have some plastic in your balls once in a while. Your life is short.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's such an important point to make, because I've definitely like, I used to be a bit of it, like, what, health. Actually, I remember when I was studying nutrition and I was like super health conscious. Like, I was like a water drinking Nazi. I'd have my 2 liters every day. I would like track it. And I was very like rigid around certain things. And now I find I am a lot more, I've become a lot more aware of things that actually affect health, especially like when we're talking about energetics, and like, now, like we always bless our meals before we eat, blessing your water, not having to, now I just drink when I'm thirsty, and I know that I'm getting a lot of my water intake from my food. So there's just, it's so important, because I think now I'm, way less rigid. And then, we eat 80%, 90% of the time. And then when we do go out for a meal and it's not like all organic and whatever, it's like we enjoy it. Like, we actually go out and just enjoy it. And I think, it's like they say, like, how many pack-a-day smokers were there up until the 90s or whenever they banned smoking everywhere, that like lived like very long lives. It's because they weren't like, oh my God, the cigarette's killing me, I'm smoking and it's killing me. It's like the thought or the perception around something being bad for you will kill you quicker than the actual thing. Actually, and to that point, we wanted to bring up tobacco, because as we now know, tobacco, when it's in its unbastardized form, is actually amazing, has amazing health benefits. Yeah. But Isaac was talking about, looking some things up around nicotine lately. What did you want to ask?
I don't know. Like, what do you think about tobacco? Do you do anything with it? Have you experimented with it? Like, what are your thoughts on that, just in general?
Yeah, tobacco is a very important plant to me. It's actually a plant that I learned a lot about in giving and reverence to, the work that I do with the land and harvesting and accepting the gifts of nature, right? And so and this goes back to like some native traditions, but I think that even, beyond that, there's just whether, the tobacco plant itself represents, the giving plant, or just the mindset, which is I'm giving away something that I could consider valuable. It's certainly valuable in prison or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it can be recognized as currency, right? And I'm giving it without any strings attached. At the base of this plant that I'm asking for guidance with, whether or not I am harvesting it. Sometimes it's just like, here, you want some of this? I know that there's elementals and fairies. Like I've never seen one and like, there it is. I took a picture and like, I see it. I just get the sense. And when I'm out there in the field, I really feel like, with tobacco, I really feel like they're encroaching on like, can we have some? Like kids following like a candy parade or something like that. But tobacco as a plant, like I just grew that for the first time last year. I got some great seeds from Grateful Harvest Seed Company out of near Springfield, Kabul, Missouri.
Yeah.
Adam, Mr. Permy Bear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they grew into these beautiful plants. And then I was also gifted a version. So this was the Nicotiana Virginia, which is like the classic, R.J. Reynolds cigarette tobacco. And then I also was given some plants of the Oneida tobacco, which is like a real small little leaf plant. And that's like the more psychoactive, the more like, the I don't know, the ceremonial grade kind of tobacco, I guess you could say. And so that was really fun. And that was really special to have that relationship finally accomplished with these plants, which is like growing them, seeing them from seeds and growing them into seedlings and into big plants and managing the pest and harvesting them and curing them. And I recognize, there's so much medicine about tobacco beyond the components, beyond the constituents, beyond the things that tobacco does, which is many. Like when one ingests tobacco in the ways that it's typically ingested, whether that's as a poultice, chewing tobacco, what's it called, hape or hobby, which is like snorting the super fine powder, smoking it. People do this, and it's accustomed to to smoke for the purpose of peace. And what is peace? Like, what does that mean? It's like, okay, the opportunity to be still with my thoughts and delegate and have some, time with, other parties to maybe talk about these things or come up with something. I think of that as entirely in terms of like the air element in masculine symbolism that tobacco as a plant really holds, which is like very masculine plant. And that is, okay, how do we, and this is in the, the Lord of the Rings, where it's like Gandalf, they're like, what do we do, Gandalf? He's like, pass me the pipe, I'll figure it out. It's just like, he's over there like smoking his pipe, and he's like, oh, what are we going to do? And that's what tobacco is kind of like. It's like, to me, it's a plant that helps people figure out where they're stuck. And then you could translate that also in biology as like, it helps with constipation, helps move your bowels. It helps just move things along. And when things are like moving along regularly, but also not as a crutch to move them along, like you're on your quest, you're with your friends, you're going to throw the ring in Mordor or whatever. But there's times where you're like kind of, constipated of the mind. You're like, what are we going to do? Or, like in terms of like the peace pipe, where people are like, can we just talk this out? What are the terms here? And let's rise above the emotional volatility of this subject a little bit. So I think that's what tobacco offers, especially in that context of ceremony and medicine, is the opportunity to rise above the emotional capacity that that we as human beings live by, and to enter into maybe a more masculine pointed space of direction and directionality. And, tobacco is really also famed for its use with parasites, which is an interesting topic too, because, a lot of this is, in as far as like natural and holistic health, sometimes when the word parasites is invoked, then people will think like parasites equals, cause of, whatever disease or parasite. If it wasn't for my parasites, I would be this way. And from a further examination in the holistic mindset, you might recognize that parasites, just like the other things that are in this world, that are inhabiting this world, is just a name that is constructed by people for something that we wish wasn't there, but it doesn't actually exist in nature. That the parasites maybe even point the way towards the terrain that can be cleaned up. So where do you see parasites in nature? Well, they don't. You see maggots maybe eating a bunch of dead animals, but it's not like they're gonna leave the dead animal and just like take over the whole woods or something like that. They have their function. And so if we have and people with livestock will probably disagree with me with this, but because they reliably use tobacco for removal of parasites and their animals get better. But really, when it comes to parasites and tobacco and the promise that tobacco has, which is like removing the parasites, it's actually, I think it more speaks more to how it changes our terrain, how it gives our terrain a chance to clean itself up and eliminate the cause itself for the parasites and what they do, and in honor of the parasites, which is like they're just got a role in nature too. It's like, hey, don't shoot the janitor, like, I'm just here cleaning up.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And I'm just curious because we have some friends that have animals, and sometimes we'll talk about putting animals on this property, even though it's the terrain's a bit like steep. But how do the people use tobacco for parasites or managing the terrain in livestock? Would they eat it or drink, like put it in their water, or how do they use it?
Yeah, well, from what I understand, because I've never done this before actually, but and this is specific livestock, you can't do it. It's like different for things like dogs and cats. So I'm not going to advise on that. But just adding a little bit of it to the feed. So same in the same way that you might just leave it as an offering, as a gift to change the outcome. And but then like after COVID and all that stuff, there's all these other people popping up that we're talking about, like you got to get nicotine. People who are smoking or living, people like nicotine changes the snake, snake venom or something, and like it's all good if you just get my patch or whatever.
Yeah, they're all doing like these like nicotine patches and pouches and stuff. What do you think of those?
The thing is that I don't know. Okay, I think that there's something in tobacco that is reliable at helping with you're changing the body's terrain so that it doesn't need parasites. And so if that means as a result there's less parasites, then that's awesome, especially if you think that parasites are the cause, even if they're not. But when it comes to nicotine though, see, this is where I get skeptical, because I used to think in terms of qualitative and quantitative measurements of plants. And so when it came down to like, okay, there's this chemical that's in this plant and it has this effect. And when we change this chemical, we can actually, that's how we can make pharmaceutical drugs and things like that based on this chemical. But the more I've practiced and the more I've been into it, I've really just forsaken all of that talk, because first of all, it doesn't feel right to me to like be up on the latest mumbo jumbo of materialism and molecules and how they interact with post hoc reasoning, and get it more into the qualitative aspect of describing the plants, which is like tobacco is bitter. Like if you taste tobacco, it has a bitter flavor. It has a resinous flavor. So the plants that are resinous do one thing. They typically have a change that change the effect of the mucosal tissues. Like that's what they do. Like if you get pine resin on your fingers, it gets sticky, and you can imagine how that would affect your mucosal tissues too. It kind of like changes it. And things that are bitter are always detoxifying, always. So every plant in the world or every taste that you have that's bitter is always going to have an expression of combining the elements of ether and air from the Ayurvedic tradition. This is the flavor of bitter. You combine ether and air, which is, just think of it like out there, and then it brings it into your body. So it's like this centripetal movement down into this, or another way of saying it's like it stimulates the movement of our parasympathetic nervous system away from our sympathetic nervous system. So it gets us out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, or it brings everything towards the center. And then once it's there, it goes down and drains out. And so that's the way I like to think about tobacco. And then so when it comes to something like nicotine, they're like, okay, here's what we did. We took this tobacco, which has all of these, it's like a symphony. It's like a symphony of all of these qualities. So imagine Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Dun, 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 dun. And there's the whole symphony, right? It's the whole thing. And then the scientists are like, you know what's the best part about that symphony? The oboe. That's what nicotine is like.
They're like,
let's just take out the oboe. We'll take out the oboe, and that's actually what makes the symphony effective. You know,
it affects the oboanic molecule. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's the oboe. It's like it's got like a different harmony to it, or whatever. And that's what nicotine is. And so, sometimes I enjoy punishing myself with reading PubMed articles, especially ones that seem to falsify and debunk some of the materialistic narrative. And so there was times where they found, like in some other plants, like the supposed active ingredient that made this plant the way that it does. And the one I'm thinking of is berberine, which is a compound, so alleged compound. By the way, chemicals assume molecules, which assume atoms and atomic theory and everything like that, right? So first you have to start with like everything's an atom, and then it turns into that. So of course there's other ways of explaining how they make pharmaceutical drugs without getting into believing into atoms, which is, you could just say it's. But anyway, so they found this compound berberine allegedly, and they took it out, and they said, okay, now we have everything else, or the rest of we've got the plant without the berberine, and we're going to give this plant to the person, and it's not going to do anything, right? And it just so happened that it did the exact same thing that the plant with the berberine does. And it's just, to me, the same example of if you're having Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and the oboe player calls in sick and he's like, hey, I can't make it. They're like, well, I mean, there is that one part that has the oboe and we'll figure it out. But the rest of us, no, I don't think most people are going to miss the oboe for the rest of the symphony. And that's kind of the way that I think about nicotine too. And so what is it actually that is making people healthy or changing the way they feel? Or, I mean, really, when you put a nicotine patch on, you can feel different. People have crazy dreams. People feel the buzz of nicotine. So what is it that is actually doing that? And I don't know, but I do think that it can have the similar effect. But when you introduce the whole plant, this is the way that everything grew up together. Like, we're with these plants, whether these plants were created with us, prior to us a day before in the Genesis story, or whatever worldview we have about our relationships with plants. It's the way it's been for a long time, and it's the way that we're used to it. And it's going to take a really long time, even if we're in the evolutionary talk, it's going to take a really long time before our body is like evolves to be like, oh, nicotine, like, let me just drink some of that down. And so in the meantime, let's just hang out with all the other exciting things about plants that make it without the side effects that we find from the drugs and the pharmaceuticals, And, of course, there's no medical advice. We're just chatting here. But because, of course, there's people out there on drugs. They're like, oh, yeah, well, maybe should I, shouldn't I? Nope. not the conversation for you. No. We're just chatting. Yeah. But
keep taking whatever you're prescribed. If you stop suddenly, it could be worse. Got to taper off.
Right.
Or just do it, I don't follow my own advice. That's the other thing. So when it comes to that, I chucked my don't anybody do this. I chucked my asthma inhaler in the trash, and then years later, I went and bought one of those epinephrine inhalers just as a backup, and then started using that. But I was like, epinephrine as a rescue, yeah, it's something about. But that led me to all these other things about how the body can heal itself naturally, which I value. But again, do not throw out your asthma inhalers if you have asthma.
In your time in America, in the West, did you ever come across the plant that brings about epinephrine? It's called Mormon tea.
Oh, wow.
It's a Mormon tea.
Interesting name.
That's
it's
cool.
out. Yeah, it's out in the
never heard that
West. I think the botanical name is epinephrine, actually. But
Oh, wow.
Is it
It's just
from
like a
is it
little-
the same one that they make ephedra with, or different?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Ephedra. That's the name. That's the botanical name. Yeah, it's like a little succulent. And yeah, it's called Mormon tea because Mormon, like Joseph Smith and the Mormons are like, no coffee, no hot beverages. And they're like, oh, we really like our tea though, because we're like British people, and and so they're always doing a little sneak around. It's funny, like all these religions always doing a little sneak around, and so they find this plant that gives them a buzz, that gives them high, like with ephedra. And they can drink it cold. It still does the same thing.
Dude,
so it's
the Mormon hand carts make a lot more sense when you realize they were just taking like ephedra, which is like almost like a natural amphetamine or something.
yeah, exactly.
So wild. Well, it's funny.
I'm gonna
'cause-
push this cart over a mountain. It's like, Gerald, wait.
Well, there's so much of like what we like in with pharmaceuticals and stuff. Like obviously a lot of it stemmed from working with plants initially, but they can't patent anything in nature, so they have to make the synthetic version because there's so many things that if you just like reverse engineered it, it comes from a plant. And I think, I'd find it hard. Like I think it'd be hard to find everything that medicine offers, which isn't really much other than masking symptoms. I think you can find like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like nature's
Like a gold nugget in there.
No, but I'm sure you could find nature's version of that would be way more beneficial and does
The antidote
the same
or
thing.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I was
like
gonna
a
say, for
counterpart.
instance, like with the with asthma. So I heard back and hopefully there's a statute of limitations. I won't explain why, but like I heard that if you take onion water or something, that was like a natural remedy for asthma. Because I was like, oh, I'd like to do more sport and stuff like that, but I want to get rid of this. And learning years later from like someone like Barbara O'Neill about onion and it affects the mucosal things like that. What I learned through my process of dealing naturally with my own asthma symptoms was, and a friend of mine who also had asthma, one of my best friends growing up, he talked about the what do they call it, surfactant. So as you exercise, your lungs actually produce this mucus. It's different. It's a special surfactant that makes it so the alveoli and everything don't stick together, so you can open up and oxygenate more. And I think there's something with that, with the with like asthma and things like that, where you have this reactive airway, it produces too much of this mucosa. But what I found also was the natural effects of the epinephrine. So as you're running, and again, I do not recommend this. I'm built a little different. So I would actually go and run in conditions that would trigger asthma-like symptoms in the cold, like in a blizzard in Wyoming, and I would go out and run and experience, and I'd keep an inhaler with me just in case, but I was like, I'm not using it. And the epinephrine in my body, so like the adrenaline, right, kicks in. And then the surfactant starts being produced in my lungs as part of that fight or flight, like, oh shit, like I can't breathe, but I'm, learning to manage my own physiology and like trust myself. And then like, in a way, just allow my body to open up and breathe. And so what happened was my body naturally produced adrenaline. I'm doing deep breathing as much as I can, and slow deep breathing, because that's all you can do when you're wheezing. And you're learning to like just manage your nervous system, bring the intensity down. The epinephrine opens up, it's a bronchodilator. So it opens up the airways a bit. Your body produces that surfactant, so things are actually breathing a lot more easily. And you move through it like that, through calm, through basically doing breath work and yeah, just persistent long breath work. Like, within 30, 45 minutes, like the symptoms of the asthma were completely gone. And it was like the flip side was I could run hours and hours with no issues in the cold, which is usually something that would trigger it. But just learning about how things affect the physiology, that made sense when I used an epinephrine inhaler. It basically mimics the same thing your body does under an adrenaline response, opens the airways, your body starts producing a little bit of that surfactant. It's more like it's just a crappier, it's like a rusty knife compared to like a samurai sword,
Can I weave on that from a qualitative standpoint?
Absolutely.
So first of all, that's awesome that with discipline, with hard work, with the proper mindset, that you're able to, train yourself, improve your conditions. And that is actually what it really takes, So like, maybe at looking back, at the scrolls of your life or something like that, maybe it'll come to pass someday that it was like, that was really what you just needed to do, just like put your mind to it and get through it. And I say that because as a clinician, like sometimes people are just really looking for the natural version of the medicine, right? And without that included, without what you described, without the application of the mindset and like breaking out of the victim consciousness and looking for solutions within and actually applying them. And so, and then you mentioned onions, and I wanted to kind of weave this in with the surfactant and epinephrine weave, is that I was just doing an herb walk this weekend, and where I live, it's like still cold and it's spring, and it's really like the first time of year that things are popping up. And the first things that pop up in the springtime in the Midwest are mustards and onions. Like that's the thing that comes to the surface. And the reason why is because there is a qualitative aspect of these plants that when you taste them, they're hot, they're warming, they bring like, this spiciness that you could feel in your chest. Some would say it's because of the sulfuric compounds and profiles and everything like that. But there's no doubt about it that when you taste the ramps, which is like the wild garlic growing, the leaf of that, and you taste it, I was at the herb walk, there's 20 people. I said, what does it taste like? Where do you feel it? And everyone said their chest. Okay, so there's a warming quality. There's something about this plant that's warming. And things that are warm melt things that are cold and things that are stuck. And when you were talking about the conditions of the alveoli, from a qualitative standpoint, I would say, okay, that sounds like damp, stuck. Like something that's just like, like foot in the mud or something like that. And from the energetic time of year, the springtime is like that. There's a lot of mud. There's a lot of people trying to break out of their winter physiology in their body, because in the wintertime, people want to hold on to everything. Like, I can't get rid of that. I might be needing that. I might need to burn that off. So just let me hold on to that. And then the springtime comes and it says, the body's, it's like, okay, we can get rid of that. Sometimes people want to hold back for whatever reason. They're more predisposed to their dampness. And so something like garlic or onions or the onion water that they were talking about, this is the most fantastic remedy for a damp, stagnant cough. Now, when people have coughs, they can have all types of presentations of cough, like dry cough or spastic cough, or like, please don't ask me to cough because I won't be able to stop. But that damp, like springtime, like yucky stuff in the lungs kind of cough, that's what onions are great for. And so you can make the onion skin water. You can make a onion poultice, which is chopping up an onion, putting it in a fryer pan, covering it with olive oil, a little bit of olive oil just to cook off the acids that are on there. And then taking that, putting it into a linen cloth or a towel or an old shirt, plopping it on your chest and letting it do its thing, because something in the onions is breaking through the chest. It's breaking through the skin. It's going into deep somehow, somewhere, and it's melting all the stuff inside and it's pulling it out. It's an expectorant in that way. Well, the plants that are breaking from the melted snowy mud ground are doing the same thing, and that's their signature too. And so another way of saying that, maybe like my way of thinking about this and what you were just describing, is that you were putting yourself in a condition where you were creating some tension, at least because of the lack of air, running and being in a mountain and elevation or something like that, whatever the case may be. And then also, which doesn't allow those fluid dynamics to start to accumulate that dampness, which leads to the stagnation and leads to the stuckness. And in the meantime, you're introducing the warmth, you're introducing the vitalization and the circulation. And so it kind of has a similar effect as onions would, but you're doing it yourself just by being in that practice. Yeah. And so that's a qualitative examination of that same example.
Yeah. I love breaking things apart that way. You start to see and almost like a feeling as well. Like, yeah, I know, like you're starting to know how the body works, how it responds. And then you're connecting it to the seasonality, which is good because it's like, the effects through time, at different times of the year.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to come back to that because as a society, we're obviously very much steered away from our natural rhythms, our natural cycles, eating with the seasons, being aware of what's happening in the seasons, like energetically, kind of what surrounds that particular season. And I know for me, the more and it's helped a lot, like moving out of the city and being more surrounded by nature, it's like you kind of can't help but just move more with the seasons. And I find that, it brings a lot more harmony and it just makes things easier. Like before I was always like, what should I be eating? Like what, because you can just get everything at the supermarket year round. So it's like, what's the perfect diet for me? And it's like now we shop primarily at our local farmers market. So we just get what's in season and, it takes out all of that thinking. But just back to the onion, it's so interesting because one of my ex-boyfriends that I was with, so he lived with his nan, and she always, when someone was sick, she would cut half an onion and leave it in the room or by the bed or whatever when someone was sick. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of that, seen it, didn't really know. And he was just like, yeah, my nan always does it when someone's sick. And I didn't really know why. And I thought, okay, that's cool. And then so now years later, learning more about, the properties of onion and what it actually does, it makes so much sense. And I think I even read this in Barbara O'Neill's book. She talks about doing the same thing or something similar. And she talks about onion poultices. And I was like, isn't that fascinating? And I love that these these old home remedies that, have been around for centuries that so many people brush off as like, oh, that's just an old wives' tale. They actually work. And I love that. And I love hearing you talk about this stuff, Kyle, because as someone who studied, a science degree doing nutrition, honestly, now I'm just like, oh, you're like the PubMed stuff. I'm like, yawn. Like I do not have a science background. And I actually really struggled doing, in my first year doing biology and biochemistry and chemistry. And it's funny because actually during those years, I actually was brought a lot closer to God because as I started learning more about the human body and how it functions and all these, plants in nature and fruits and vegetables, I thought, whatever created us is like, this is incredible. Like who could ever think of this? Like, it's like so beyond to me, the cells and the biology of it all. It's like, this is like, it brought me closer to this higher power. I was like, wherever we come from is incredible. And I'm kind of not that interested in things on a cellular level. I'm interested in like what you're talking about, the energetics. And for me, I find that stuff easier to remember than like, well, this is what the body is doing. And then you put this thing in and it's this, like you're saying, all the different constituents of the fruit or the vegetable or the food, whatever it is that's doing the thing. It's like, no, well, it has these warming properties and it's things that you can actually you feel the sensation of them. And it's like, I don't know, for me, I can just make that connection better than like trying to remember like for this, you give this. And yeah, I just love that, like looking at it that way because I think as we know now, there's so much in science that's incorrect or just based on a theory that's never actually been proven to be true.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. That has a feeling. Now, if you were to just look at the notes or something like that, would that inspire the same thing? So that feeling, the quality, the tonal sense, that's the way that we communicate with each other. that's the way that plants and the medicine and the living world and the birds and everything in this world and the way that things are even shaped and formed communicate too. You reminded me something. I wanted to. I got left off with that topic, but with the onions, because this is something I talked about in the herb walk too, which is that story of how people's grandmothers would used to take the onions and then they would put them by the window and it would be there to capture the bad spirit. That's what it would do. Like it would capture the bad spirit. And if you think about this in the context of the respiratory system, the place where we take in our sacred breath, right? And mix it into whatever it turns into electricity, it turns into something. And now we're talking to each other. We're animated. And so that has that tradition of the onions doing that, being available as an onion poultice. Okay. So I always think of the onion as, in Ghostbusters, where they're like fighting the Ghostbuster, they're fighting the ghost. They're like busting it. And they're like, don't cross the streams. They're like, shh. And then they get him. And then the ghost is like, it's all just tangled up in the whatever unit thing. And then they throw out the little trap, and it has a little rheostat where they step on, and the trap opens up, and the spirit's like, and it goes sucked in. That to me, and then they pull that thing back out, and they're like, we got a hot one here. That's what an onion does for the spirits. It's like pulling those things out of the ether somewhere. And so I always tell people, like, if you get an onion from the store, from the market, at farmer's market, and you cut into it, and you see that there's like a little black spot in there, here's what you got to do. You got to thank that onion for taking the spirit. An old word for influenza was influence of the stars, or this etheric influence, right? It captured that and it put it into its onion and it wrapped it up in all these different layers. And then you got to thank it and then compost it. Don't try to cut around it and cook it. That's what the bad guys in Ghostbusters did. They're like, we got to shut this thing down. And then what happened? All the ghosts came out and all the spirits came out and the marshmallow man came loose. So it's like, don't try to mess with the spirits that come out of the
That's
onions.
a great picture. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Process is like educating through story. I think that's like an art form that we've lost. Like, when we look back to all the traditional cultures, everything was passed down through story and through word of mouth, and like they didn't really write a lot of things down. And I love that, because again, for me, like, to remember, I'll always remember a story, try to remember the biological process of something. I'm like, I got no idea. But like, I love that you tell that. And yeah, like, can you speak more to like, is that something you do as part of the herb walks? Like, where you actually tell some of the stories about the plants and the energy and then how they're used?
Yeah, so that's how I connect with plants, really, is through their story, through their myth, through their legends. Like like I said, like, this can be very punitive to go onto PubMed or to commit to recognizing or remembering a list of constituents that plants do. Like, oh my gosh, it's so boring. I would just change. I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna get an office job. This is not for me.
Yeah.
And so the way that I learn about things is through that. And that's like mimetic art, right? You could take all of this big story and you condense it down to tell about this plant. And then it's not only it's not like a closed story that's never going to be changed or whatever. It is changing, just like the plant's changing, just like this is how like the Bible works, I think. People can read the Bible like a bunch of times, and then you read it again, you're like, wow. It's like a living logos that happens with, and the same thing can happen with the way that even that's in the plant's name. So you could take a plant's name and break it down. This could be like the name that everyone calls it, like Melissa or chamomile or something like that. And then also the botanical name, like the botanical name of chamomile, for example, is matricaria. So in the word chamomile and matricaria, we have the same word. You have the word for mom, which is the matron, the matrix, which is also the matrix, right? Like, this is the place where everything happens. And that's where chamomile works. It works in the center of our body where it helps with organization of the digestive system or the nourishment, which is also related to the archetype of mom. And it also works with calming and relaxing. I don't know if you can hear, but I got a couple of crying babies upstairs right now. And my wife, who is the chamomile, is the matriarch. Yeah, the matriarch. That's what people sometimes at the herb shop call it. They're like, "Do you have this plant, chamomile?" I'm like, that's a great name for it. I never heard of that. And she's going to go calm them down and soothe them and do the things that chamomile also can do. And so, how I love learning about plants. This is how I love teaching about plants. And I love teaching about plants in ways that we can experience without having to appeal to authority. So when it comes to like the things about this plant has X constituent or, chemicals in it. Now, I have to like maybe pat myself on the back for remembering all these big words and all these processes, but really I'm just appealing to somebody else's process. Like, what if that process is wrong? It probably is. There's definitely questionable. Okay. Yeah. It's definitely questionable. And so when it comes to our own experiences, not that those are also infallible, but at least it gives us a better triangulation with the way that we can understand reality, right? So if I taste, let's just say chamomile again. The flavor of, if I were to like pick the flower of it and I'm looking at it now, the sense that I see, like, what is it? It's yellow, like the sun with like bright white moon petals around it. It's got this like mix between sun and moon or Solomon or this place within our body where the mother comes into the solar plexus, right? That kind of thing just signaled in the flower petal itself. And then the leaf form has its own morphology, which is very airy and ferny like. So it speaks also to like the airy qualities that we can have, like the air quality is the quality of the nervous system and how I think. And that's what chamomile is really good for. It's like, hey, you're thinking too much. Let's just tone it down a little bit and put you back into your body. But when you taste something, and when I invite my students to taste something, it's like, what are we tasting? Like objectively, like what is this flavor? And for the most part, people will say like, hey, that's really aromatic. Like that tastes like I can smell it before I taste it. That means something. Things that are aromatic will always move our consciousness away from our center. They always dispel congestion. Everything that's aromatic dispels congestion. And I remember saying too that everything that's bitter detoxifies. And that's what makes chamomile really special and really potent and really familiar to a lot of people, is that it's a combination of those two. So they'll say, it's really aromatic, but it's also a little bitter. Hey, but it's also a little sweet. It's palatable. It's like sweet is the flavor of building, nourishing, or building our trust or building our relationship. Bitter is the flavor of detoxification. So, my food is sitting here. My anger is sitting here. Like the way that I've worked myself up is just like, "Arr," and chamomile drains it down. And also the flavor of aromatics, like, I could relax this tension that's like held inside. And something like that, just experiencing it, just knowing simple principles and ways of understanding plants is so much more effective at explaining how chamomile might resolve somebody's tummy ache or somebody's anger or something, other than going into like, okay, well, there's this chemical called chamomoline, blah, 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 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's the latest thing. It's all the latest thing. We're isolating it and put it into a pill. Like, okay.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, we actually use that. So at our wedding.
I know, that's why I was loving hearing you explain that, because I had chamomile flowers in my hair for the wedding.
Really?
And
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, and a big part of why we got married was because we feel like, since Isaac and I met, I'm like, I'm ready to have babies, and we just always thought we were going to have kids before we got married. And part of the reason we got married was because we both feel like on a spiritual level, this baby's not going to come in until we're married. So just so beautiful, because that was in our vows to each other about, starting a family. And yeah, just so beautiful that I literally had those flowers in my hair, and it's like so maternal.
We kept them because we had a few extra as well. So I dried them out, and I used a little bit for your mom the next day. Yeah. She was having stomach issues actually.
Yeah.
And so we used some of the chamomile from the wedding to to help her out.
Yeah.
Super potent.
Yeah.
No, we were going back to what we were talking about at the top of this, where we were talking about energy infused into the things that we're making. And, it takes two to make one and that kind of thing. And the matron and the matrix. Oh, wow. That's
it all just plays out. It's amazing.
Funny too, because I love that, because even like when we picked our wedding date, Isaac was like, we should check the astrology and pick a date based on what's happening. And I was like, nah, babe, we'll pick a date, and I just trust that we'll pick the right date. Again, woman, let's just intuit it. And even that with the plants, right? Because I was looking at some other flowers for my hair, and I just couldn't get them because we ended up going to one of our local growers, and I ended up just getting all of the flowers from the one place. And they only had the chamomile, and I was like, oh, that's kind of what I wanted, and whatever. And it's just so interesting how, like when you're connected in that way, you just will naturally be drawn to the right things. Like I didn't pick the chamomile flowers for the energy that they bring, but it just fits so perfectly. And so I wanted to ask you, because we kind of joke around here and call Isaac the plant whisperer, because he finds all these new things growing here that they don't have in Wyoming or Texas. And he just kind of can intuit. Like, do you want to explain the experience that you have sometimes where you just kind of will know what to do with the plant? Because I also want to know if you've had this experience.
The most clear one was back in Wyoming, and I find the more you spend time outdoors, like you mentioned, this intuition can kind of flow through you. But I was building this big greenhouse, and I was trying to reclaim some of these old building methods, doing like mortise and tenon. Anyways, I was outside all summer building this, like learning how to do timber framing with a mallet and a chisel. And then after I got the thing up, and I got these seeds, and I planted, because I wanted to make it like the grass doesn't grow super lush in Wyoming if it's really dry. So I got this form of plant that has the ability to stay green even when it's really dry. It's a legume. I can't remember the name of it, but anyways, somewhere in those seeds were some other plants. And so, as you dig up soil, certain weeds will like kind of come to life and like to repair and rebuild, the microbial structure or whatever. But I had two plants. There's two growing there. I didn't know what they were exactly. One of them looked kind of familiar to something I remember from my survival training in the military. And then I just was like, almost like the plant was speaking to me. Like, eat me, you're fine. So I just picked it up without even questioning, just popped it in my mouth, ate it, and was like, it's kind of spicy, whatever. And then I took, those apps where you can scan the plant and see what it is. I looked afterwards and I was like, oh, it's a type of, what do you guys call it? Rocket. It's a wild rocket, which is
arugula.
Arugula. Yeah. Arugula, or brassica, some kind. Yep.
Yeah, and I forget the other name of the other one. It was some kind of sorrel. But I've had that happen here. The big one was the bunya. So the bunya is like this giant pine cone looking thing. It's like as big as your head. They have these big pine. It's not technically a pine tree, but it's very close. But it's very prehistoric. And just seeing that cone, I was like, I have to eat something from this. I just knew it. I don't know why, but I was like, do you guys eat these? And they're like, some of the people were like, yeah. Like no one I knew would actually, or maybe they'd tried it and they weren't impressed. But I just started working with it, like, harvesting a bunch of these cones, figuring out how to get the nut out, which is really, really hard. And then drying it, eventually made flour out of it and did all kinds of stuff. But I was like, I just knew that this was good for me. I don't know why. And same thing with some of the ferns around here.
Yeah, so he'll kind of have this intuition about the plants and then learn stuff about it after. So the funny thing with the bunya is after he started working with it, and we were asking more people about it, they call, so the indigenous here call it mother's milk, and it's super, like it's just packed full of nutrients, but it's such a process to get down to the nut, to the part that you can actually eat. And then we'll learn, like, and it's got, so many nutritional benefits to it. But like, he didn't know that when he started working with it. So yeah, I'd love to know, Kyle, for you, like, do you have experiences like that where you'll just be drawn to a plant and you'll intuitively kind of know what to do with it before you even maybe know what it is or exactly what it's good for?
Yes, all the time. And I think this is actually very natural. Like, this is kind of like a natural state for people. And so we're here, we're talking about it now, and there might be some people getting on their haunches like, alarm bells going off. Like, you gotta know what you're doing before you eat a plant, because that's how people die. And there's this, whole worldview based on like the reason why people know what plants are good for, quote unquote good for, in a utilitarian sense, that's the worldview. It's like utilitarian. It's like the reason why anyone knows what anything does or is good for is because they're standing on the shoulders of the people who got poisoned before them or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, okay, Larry's dead. So check. Everyone in the tribe, make sure you don't eat that one, right? But I really do think that, it is like something that everybody has the capability of knowing somewhere in their mind. And that's the reason why, is because plants form themselves in particular ways with harmonic ratios, with the way that they look like things. This is a theory called the doctrine of signatures. And the doctrine of signatures is something I use a lot. And it helps me understand plants. And it's something I rely on in my relationship building with plants, and also as like maybe a mimetic device for like remembering how plants can be used medicinally, because that's the work that I do. But I don't think that it's limited to that. And that's what the materialist will say. So if you go to Wikipedia or like Rationalpedia or something, it'll be like, these guys believe that because the walnut looks like a brain and it's good for the brain, that means all plants that look like the brain are good. And it's like, well, there is something to that. The thing that's to that is that the form of the plant, this is getting away from the atomic theory now. Now we're in the term, like the terms of like the ether cosmology. So there's some sort of law that in the ether cosmology that is like, the question is, what is the law that makes it so that a plant that is shaped in a particular way has this energy to it? Or let's just say anything that's shaped in this particular way, a liver, urethra, a eustachian tube, something, it's like, if we could recognize what some of these plants are, like what they look like, maybe without even having to dissect a human, but even just knowing instinctively too, that like by palpating, like, oh, my liver has 3 lobes. Like I didn't have to do any dissecting to know that, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think that there's something really, really, this is the thing that one of the reasons why I study the doctrine of signatures is because I want to have the ability to go anywhere in the world and look at any plant that I see and be like, that's what this plant does. Like that. I know that because I have such a strong relationship with the doctrine of signatures and a strong understanding of it in my frontal consciousness. But I know that everybody has this recognition of communication in their subconscious somewhere. And that's just accessing that. It's just like, that's what you were doing. You're accessing that. So maybe, that's the same way that people can know what's coming around the corner, or, see, like feel the feeling that somebody's looking at you from behind, or I know what's going to happen next or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I will say that. I'll go ahead.
No, I was just going to say when you're in a state like accessing these types of sensations, you know what I mean? Like you're not necessarily like demanding, what does this plant do? You know what I mean? There's like a curiosity or like an openness, a witness to it. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it almost like it says it,
Yeah, you bring up a really good point though, and I should specify that, because I forget. I'm in my own little world doing my thing, but like I did go through survival school. It wasn't super in depth about the plants, but I really pay attention to what they taught us about plants, and I practice it. And I fed my team with stuff that I found and wild harvested and all that stuff. But the other thing of it is there's that method of testing things for toxicity. You take a little bit and you put it on your skin, see how that feels. Right. Then you put it on your outside of your lip, wait a few minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and then put it on the inside of your lip. So I did do that with a couple of those plants, and I'll do that from here from time to time, because there's some stuff that grows here, man, that looks. I take pictures of it and I'll show people, that I know that know stuff. I'm like, this looks like a freaking alien, like it's a flower, but its mouth opens and there's like these stringy tendrils of like drool and this like weird tongue looking thing coming out of it. And I'm like, wow, that's definitely poisonous, right? And they're like, oh no, it's actually edible. It's like, how many, like, there's so many things here that look toxic that are actually very edible that I'm told. I'm still not going to eat it. But
Things, because I think we've got some in our forest on the property. There's like a particular red berry that you cannot eat, and the indigenous say like it's red, and that's their like it's red is like a warning, like don't eat it. Obviously, that doesn't apply to everything. But yeah, there's certain things. But I was going to say too, I think it's so beneficial to learn from like wherever you are in the world, learn from your indigenous cultures. Like we're very lucky here where we are. A lot of people have that knowledge. And I think that's, I feel like that's way more beneficial than like sitting on Google and looking up like all the plants, because they're going to have like, we've learned so much about the plants in our area that through people telling us, and a lot of it comes from this, you know, ancient indigenous knowledge. It's just, like that stuff you just don't find on the internet, and it's so much more valuable in my opinion.
People who know about plants, they don't like to gatekeep that stuff. You know, like,
yeah, exactly.
If you are interested in plants and you're like, hey, what do you like? If you like come across somebody who's like taking a picture or like looking at something in the you know, like really getting out, like if you ask them, they're gonna be like, they might be like, hey, just don't blow it to everyone that this is my spot. You know, like this is my honey hole, but get a load of this. Check it out. It's really cool. Everybody that's into plants does that because everyone recognizes that these are gifts, you know, that they're gifts from the plants, from the creator, and that they have a multiplicity of functions, whether it be, you know, textiles or building or medicine or food or all of the above, you know, or making a boundary or even spiritually cleansing or something like that, or just for the sake of beauty. Like that's an important thing, you know?
Yeah, there's a different feel down here. And I think I understand why, because I've talked with some of the native folks that know a lot about plants, and there's always some form. It feels a little bit cagey. It feels a little bit like I'll hint at some of the things that we know about some of these plants, but like I'm not like the elders don't want us telling like Westerners about it. But I understand, like Australia is a bit different. Now, I love the people, like the average people here, but the government in Australia is insane. Like it's literally, I mean, you know, we know some people that were, you know, raised around this, but it's like they've got some weird dark magic stuff at the top, and they do silly things like, oh, you see this plant? We're exterminating it. So you have to let us come on your property and poison all of your plants to kill this one plant that we decided is a weed. So they'll do stuff like that.
Well, they're doing it with the fire ants here.
With the fire, we don't have a
fire problem, but they've created this problem where they want to come and basically poison
things. And the government doesn't have as many of the limitations as America. Like the people have more rights in the States, they'll stand up for their rights more.
Well, we don't have a Bill of Rights. Our Constitution, this is like a rabbit hole we're not going to go down, but our Constitution doesn't stand up very strong because...
But the point was, like, it's a smaller country, smaller population. It's a bit easier for them to come in and just be like, oh, this one amazing plant that the indigenous use very medicinally. Either they would exploit it and completely take it out, or they'd be like, because they just like to, I think they just like to fuck with people and just be like, oh, you're not allowed to, because they'll put you in prison if you grow tobacco here. Like, it's insane. It's just crazy. Wow. So
that reminds me that there's a plant, kava kava, and that's like a plant that's traditionally used in the Pacific islands, you know, like you find it from like Hawaii to
Fiji,
Vanuatu and
Fiji has it,
places like that.
Yeah.
And so the way that kava kava is used is very similar to the way that tobacco is used. It's like a socially acceptable relaxant, you know. It's something, the feeling of kava kava when you ingest it or when you take it or whatever, it's like it relaxes musculoskeletal tension, and it makes people feel, when you feel free of tension, what do you do is the question. Like, I'm taking a nap. Other people are like, I'm gonna dance, I'm gonna draw a picture, whatever. Like that's what happens. And so, and in these cultures, they have a strong connection with the medicine of their culture because of kava kava and the preparation of kava kava. So imagine like an agrarian culture, people who work all day long, and the men are doing one thing out in the field all day, and they're polarizing themselves from their couples, and the women are doing another thing all day, and then At the end of the day, to come together, before they come together, the women will chew on kava kava root, the root of kava kava. They'll chew it on, all of them gossip and whatnot, spit it into the bowl, and then they leave the tent. And then the men come into the tent. Oh, how dare you! You got to put them all together. This is the way it is. And then the men come into the tent, and now they each drink it. So it was chewed by the women, and now it's drunk by the men, right? And then after that, everyone feels good, and then they go home and they sleep well, and procreate and whatever. Okay, so this is a very strong plant to the culture. Well, whatever that influence is in Australia is probably much more than other Commonwealth countries because of the proximity, and so Australia studied in a very, very deceitful way to make kava kava illegal. What they found was this is the headline of the article: kava kava causes liver failure. And so what they did was they took the above ground portion, the aerial portion of the plants, which is not something that's used traditionally. They put it in a way that nobody would ever use it, and isolated it into a syringe and injected it into the veins of some poor rats who developed, the typical, the usual botched science, right? Yeah. But with such a amount of, funding and proclamation behind the finding, that it actually, other countries at that time that they did that, other countries at the time were like, oh yeah, it's illegal here too now. So, you can't send it to Germany and you can't send it to these other places. And then it took another decade for people to be like, well, that was kind of dumb and there's really no reason for that. And why are we enforcing this, ridiculous law that all these other countries have to enforce? But it was still based on this thing. And the idea here was, when it comes to Australian science or whatever, it was never about safety. It was always about control. It was always about taking something that was fundamental to the medicine of a particular culture that may be inhabited and also influenced and traded. You could, you were hinting earlier about how indigenous cultures might close themselves off with their wisdom because of their lack of initiation. Like, say, hey, I'm a white guy. What are you smoking over there, buddy? And they're like, yeah, well, come into another 12 years with us or whatever, and then we'll tell you. But in these other cultures, it's like you can imagine an indigenous culture from Australia and other people who have a strong connection to their homeland indigenous culture, and they're trading their secrets and their medicine. And it's making them and the herbal medicine industry itself more powerful. And you have a study like that that's like, no, and case closed, and if you do it, then you're going to jail and at the point of a gun. And that's kind of like what you were talking about there too, with these nonsense laws about, we got to eradicate this weed, and then doing so is going to create all these conditions for fires and whatever. It's just it's ridiculous. It's crazy. Yeah. So
Well, that study you mentioned, they did the same thing with comfrey, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Australia that came up with that study as well.
Okay, we don't have to blame Australia for all the bad science now.
But it was, the same thing. It was like, oh, liver damage. And there was 3 people that had liver issues that were eating a lot of comfrey. Oh, was it 2?
2.
Yeah,
just 2.
Yeah.
And
wasn't it the same thing they were eating these insane amounts or ingesting these insane amounts of comfrey that no one would ever have that much?
I don't know if it was that, but I think they already had a compromised system. And so they blamed comfrey for the liver damage, but they never specified that what was actually the condition as far as what I saw. But then the same thing, they did the oral gavage where they just squirt a ton of comfrey down the throat of rats and feed them nothing but comfrey for a while, and then they I don't know if they died or if they just killed them and dissected the liver and found damage, but
exactly.
I always say that too, you can have too much of a good thing. It's all about balance, and even the most beneficial plant, herb, fruit, vegetable, anything, if you have too much of it and not enough of other things, you're going to come out of balance in one way or another.
I think it's people's responsibility. We have this tradition in America where you, like it's your duty to disobey illegal orders. It's your duty to like, if the government becomes tyrannical and oppressive, allegedly.
Historically, that was the case. We didn't really, I felt like that one
went out the
they missed
window
the
in
memo
COVID.
on that when it came to COVID.
Just like, if they're doing stupid things, you don't have to be stupid with everybody. You know, like if you're responsible and you do things, and you don't have to broadcast it on your YouTube channel saying that you're doing this and that, but like you can also say, like I'm connected to nature, and I don't believe that like it's almost like a religious thing for me too, where it's not religious but spiritual. That this is sacred. This is my sacred connection to these plants and to my creator, and I put that authority over any university and any like government agency because agencies, it's so bullshit, man. Like I worked with these people. I worked in the government. I worked in the army, and it's full of idiots. We had this one guy, who's an FBI guy, that came in and wanted to be a special operator, and like fucking nerds. He was such a dork. Like, no hate for the guy, but I'm just like, that's the culture of like the Fed, where it's just like this sense of superiority that's some of it's kind of earned, but it's like the most advanced practitioners I've seen are typically what I've seen, the ones that really have a love for their craft, whether it's, doing combat stuff or herbalism or whatever. They're very humble people when they really like do it out of this, like, well, one's like a natural talent and this spiritual calling to it. There's this humility to it. And there's a power with that, there's respect, and the people that you listen to. And I think that I'm down for. Like, I'm all for the government if they want to act professionally and they want to be respectful of the people that they're not governing, but the people that they're serving. That is the culture in America that I want to keep fostering, is this idea that the government is there to serve the people, to keep order and establish that. But we're not here to serve the government. And Australia is very different. I still think that's a universal law. I operate on that principle, that the government is here to actually serve the people, which, depending, like, it doesn't matter to me which government I'm in. Like, if I go to Iran, I assume the same thing. It may not match reality, but that's the energy that I'm carrying. That's the energy that I'm speaking. And that's the authority that I'm calling on from the creator God, and the angel armies that he's put here. Is like, we're the liaison on earth to that power. So spread that.
In a similar vein, the industry of herbalism in America is unregulated in a most beautiful way. Like, I know that there's a lot of people in my field in America who join like professional organizations called like a guild or something like that. It's just a fancy club. You give some money to it just to get some letters in front of your name or after your name to show that you're in this club. But they have no accreditation. They don't have any power at all. It's just a recognition of a club. And this is and some of the people that are in this club, the American Herbalist Guild, and I'm not saying everyone, but there's a lot of people who are, or who want to be, who actually want to have the field of herbalism be more regulated in order to, get this, take insurance money. It's like the worst idea ever. Yeah. Okay, one of the beautiful things about being an herbalist is to have this especially in this country, is to have this connection to ancestral arts without having a permit. If I wanted to be a professional herbalist in the country where my wife's from, in Europe, I would have to go to get a master's in pharmacy, and then I would show up at work with a white coat on. And if I were to tell you to grow some echinacea in your garden, and at this stage harvest it and make it into a tea because of your lymphatic, like maybe you have some swollen glands or something like that, then that would be practicing medicine without a license. Oh. If I said, oh, you have a tummy ache, why don't you just drink some chamomile tea? Go to your garden and get some chamomile tea. That would be practicing medicine without a license. All right. Here in America, we can do that unregulated, and I like it that way. I want it to stay that way, and I don't want any damn insurance money or any of those people coming in and trying to get us
just
like,
ruins it.
Like we're on the same level as doctors. Like screw them and all of their problems that the doctors have because of that type of thing. Like we do not want. I really am an advocate for the most pure form of herbalism, which is everyone can be an herbalist by making a cup of tea, getting to know one plant in your garden, offering it to your friends, offering it to your family, just knowing the relationship of one plant, and you can be an herbalist. And you can have that relationship with medicine and your land and all the ways that this tracks back through, either the cultures that raised this plant before were on this land, or maybe your own historical culture that had a connection to these plants. That's the beauty of, and that's in that realm right there. That's where you tap into the subconscious communication with the plants that you were describing earlier, Isaac.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We see eye to eye for sure with that. And I think, I think there's a turning with it. There's a lot of people going back to homeschooling, for instance, especially since COVID, but it was a trend going on. And people are kind of just realizing, like parents, that's like one little pebble in this side of the pot where it's like, oh, we don't have to have like a degree from a university to be a teacher for an elementary. Like the kids mostly learn on their own. We just kind of, organize and give some structure to it. That's a great attitude to have. And the results are wildly on our side, like wildly in our favor. I was homeschooled for like a year and a half before high school, went into high school and was testing at like an 11th grade level after just that much, just doing stuff by myself. My mom did zero input. I worked until maybe from like 8, 9 in the morning until noon-ish every day, and I was done. And I was like wildly going past everybody else in Texas. Now apply that same level of freedom and like self-responsibility and just love for what you're doing to everything from like healing the body or facilitating a person's own healing journey or whatever you want to call it, whatever you're allowed to say, because the government's going to crash your door and, throw flashbangs in and steal all your computers and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff is movies and TV, and like it can happen, but maybe there's a discussion to be held offline about how to avoid detection. I like to think a little bit of that. The SEER school stuff I think it's applicable.
You just don't make claims. Like that's as far as my work goes. Like I don't make any claims. If I make a claim, then I'm on like I could be held to that claim.
Yeah.
So I'm not making any claims. The only things that I'm claiming are qualitative. They're qualitative claims that are not within the realm of their speak. So if I say that this herb cures this disease name, now I'm using their proprietary language and I'm making a claim. So that really puts me on the radar. If I'm just like, hey, I wonder why the flavor of this plant has always been so reliable for the conditions that people now call this disease name, that is exactly the way that's how you do it in honor. And herbalists can learn how to do it in honor because they'll be held accountable for making claims, and that's really the case. And so it's like I just name my things like funny names. Like that's how I do it. My allergy tincture is called Allergiesy No Sneezy. Like that's what it's called. And people, it's like it puts the ball up over the net and people can just take it and slam it in. They don't have to wonder like, what is this for?
Speaking of that, I was just because I was looking at, this is like a sciencey name, but the allantoin or allantoin from comfrey. Yeah. I was reading somewhere they actually take extracts from that and they put that into allergy medicine, and as like an I don't know if it's an antihistamine or whatever the science side says it is. But have you heard about that with the comfrey? There's just one of another million uses for the plant.
Comfrey it's a funny thing, comfrey, because the name comfrey means like where we get the word conference, and the botanical name is Symphyticum, which means to join together. And so there's the symphony, right? The symphony once again.
Yeah.
And so on the plant comfrey, which means, which actually, like the green speak and the name and everything that we give it means joining together. It is such a divisive plant. Like there's something about that, right? Like it has this division in it, which is almost like encouraging the topic of talking about comfrey to bring it back together again. And so within that plant, some of the compounds are allantoin or lantoin, or I also don't know how to say it the right way. I've heard them both, right? Which is something that is alleged to improve cellular division. And so, Alexa, you were mentioning earlier, like too much of a good thing. I actually think about comfrey as like that is the embodiment of that principle, because it's always growing. It just like constantly like grows up on itself, and it falls over, and then it grows back up again. And it's very Jupiterian in that way. And Jupiter is like the great benefic, like it's like all good blessings, but too much of a good thing might be like, not so good. You have to have a little conflict. And so, when it comes to like cellular division or promoting health or promoting like the way that comfrey might help with allergies or histamines, I like to think of it just like in terms, again, of like, what is comfrey? What are we experiencing with comfrey? When you take comfrey, like it's kind of like one of the signatures of comfrey is the big, big leaves. And so when you see things that are big leaves, they kind of look like the lungs. And it's also a signature. So it's a signature for the lungs. Like that's what comfrey is really helpful for. And it's also a signature for the skin. And then it's got this like prickliness it's not like thorns, and it's not like stinging nettles, and it's not like the hair of like a strawberry plant. It's like really kind of irritating and prickly. And so something like that, when it comes to the lungs, like something that's prickly within the lungs, that comfrey could be really helpful for. When you break comfrey apart and you're playing with the fresh plant, it's like all slimy and gooey. That's what we call demulcent. And if you experience demulcency, whether you're tasting it or whether you're feeling it on your hands, it's telling the person, I structure water. That's what I do. I hydrate and I structure water, just like somewhere in your body. So where in the body? It's already told me. It's told me it works in the lungs. It structures the water in the lungs. And then also, there's plenty of signatures for comfrey when it comes to like the bones and the way that the stems appear kind of hollow, and just the way that it, constantly grows and proliferates, which will be really helpful for owies, boo-boos, broken tissue, and all that type of stuff. So when it comes to histamines, it makes perfect sense to me in the case that like an allergy reaction would be predicated on conditions of dryness, which is really helpful for structuring the body, or like irritation. Again, that demulcent, that slime, that's just gonna it's like slime time. It's Slimer that's coming through in the lungs. And it's for another Ghostbuster reference. And then, that makes sense. That makes sense to me too.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
I love it.
And I like this, like as a reminder, just talking to you, like, to sort of like uncouple myself and free myself from, because I had all this medical training and all the terminology, and I was trained to think in terms of like the medical field doing the prescription of drugs. So we would actually prescribe our own drugs as medics out in combat zones, because we didn't have doctors out there with carrying a rifle. So I think in those terms, but I'm trying to differentiate and like separate from that, both to protect myself and my business and not say things I shouldn't. But it's also just helpful and more freeing, and also, keep it in the theme of comfrey and Jupiter and this expansiveness. It's like, it frees me from just getting tunnel vision on one little thing. Like, oh, comfrey's just knit bone. It's like, oh, it's actually got these other qualities to it. Like you said, I didn't know that about the lungs, but that makes sense. And I've got family members and stuff with, like, my dad's got this like dry cough, and so
comfrey.
I'm like,
that's perfect for that.
Yeah, would you say like a poultice on the chest, or would you like?
It could be. I mean, like when it comes to like, that's one of the things about plants too, is like, I like to my students are always like, the thing that probably annoys them the most is that I'll say what the plant, and I'll say how I like to work with it, but or like the conditions that I like to work with it for, but I don't always tell people the best application of it. And the reason for that is like, maybe because it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
And, like some people will be averse to having a poultice. Some people will be averse to drinking a tea if they're not used to drinking something that tastes like the bottom of a lawnmower. Like that's what comfrey kind of tastes like. And it's like slimy, gooey, boogery lawnmower water, but it's so good. And then I would say, and then of course, most people are familiar with like a salve. And so the salve, you use comfrey. Do you make a salve with comfrey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're making a salve with comfrey, you might have the idea too. And I make a salve with comfrey and it's called Joints Joy, and it's good for joints, right? It's really helpful for joints. It's really helpful for things like that. But man, is it also good for the lungs. And so how does a salve get down to the joint? Well, the same way a salve can get down to the lungs. It just does. It goes transdermally and it does its thing. And is it actually bringing water with it to structure? No, it's giving signals to the body to tell it how to structure the water again. And the same thing can be said about, like, if you drink comfrey as a tea, you're getting all this slime and you're getting all this structured water, but that only goes as far as the stomach. And then once it's there, like it's no longer, but it has a signal. And so if we're signaling to our body that it's time to rehydrolyze this particular area. And I think that's how it works really well with joints too. This is how some people are like, oh, I have arthritis. It sounds like this. And other people are like, I have arthritis. I can't even move my arm. It works with both ways because it's cooling and it's moistening and it's draining and it's tightening and it's hallucinating and it's just normalizing. It's bringing it together. And so I think just the salve that you make would probably be really, really awesome. That's just
nice.
That's like a poultice too.
Yeah,
of course,
cool.
like, when it comes to drinking tea of comfrey, like that's where the people are like, okay, but Kyle, you got to tell them about the warning with the paralizidine alkaloids and stuff. And that's where all the people died, or, the two people that died in like the 1920s or something, that they're like, case closed, nothing else to see here. It wasn't the mine coming in town, folks. It was the comfrey for sure. Right. So therefore it's bad forever. The one thing that's true about comfrey is that these so-called paralizidine alkaloids are no longer present when the plant is in flower. So once it's in flower, it's like used up that oboe and it's no longer needed. And so you could just harvest it and drink it as a tea. And especially, I feel especially comfortable doing that with, a fixed amount of time, like 6 weeks or something like that. And
you don't want to do it every day for years, but you wouldn't do that with most things. Like, it's not
exactly
great. Like, I don't feel great if I do coffee every day for years. Like, I'm probably coming up on where I need to start backing off from it and taking a break. So the same thing with most things. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I have absolutely loved this conversation, Kyle, especially like I said, Isaac makes all of our products. He's the plant whisperer. He's the herb guy. I don't consider myself to be that kind of person, but listening to the way that you speak about plants, you're the type of person that I would love to learn this stuff from, because I feel like, and again, it's like the irony of it is like I did this science degree and it just pulled me more away. I ended up in like energetic healing and things like that, because I just think when you start understanding really, how this realm works, how our bodies work, I think energy has a lot more to say than the physical matter. And, I think that learning things like, even just the way that you're saying, like when something has this quality, this is what it does and this is what it's good for in the body. It's like you can then apply that to what you're experiencing with the plants just by touching it and tasting it and feeling it, instead of learning like, well, this plant has all of these different things and it's good for this and that. Like, like I said, I'm just like snooze. That's just so boring trying to remember all this stuff. And I think it's so much more beneficial. So I love that you're teaching this stuff. So because I've seen your website and you're doing a lot. Do you do anything online? Because I'm kind of like, I want to get in on this.
I'm glad you asked. And you know what? I don't mean to poo-poo the whole, chemical stuff. I actually think it's super valid. And you probably recognize this too when you're at the market, where you're like, okay, the only way that this person is going home with this thing is if I bust out some of these words.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So like, reading the room and stuff like that. And I get it. But yeah, online, on my website, every year I have a cohort where I do online class where we learn about the foundations of herbalism. And so that's in progress right now, where we learn about, the systems of Ayurveda, the elements, the systems from the Western. You were talking about the Greek humoral temperaments and things like that, and Chinese Chinese elements. And we put them together, and we could see how they create this type of foundation where we just learn a few principles. These principles are few, and the applications are many. And from there, and learning some foundational actions of plants, such as aromatic, such as bitter, such as demulcent, which I've mentioned, and a few others. We just go through the body. So start with the digestion, go into the respiratory system, go into the kidneys and the waterways, using the new biology kind of method, using the ideas of structured water, that our body is, more than just matter. It's also got an emotional components and spiritual components, and how the lungs can represent grief that somebody's had, or the liver can represent some anger that somebody might be holding on to, and just going through all the different systems of the body once a month. And it's from March through October. So I'll be starting that again next March. If you're interested, I would love to have you or any other listeners out there as students, because it is a worldwide thing, and I've had many students from abroad. It's really cool. And then so there's those classes, and then also live Q&A classes that are part of that too. And so that's the, you really want to get into it. You really want to learn herbalism type thing, but maybe you're like, let me just see what this guy's about for like another 6 months or so before I make up my mind. So you could find plenty of lessons. I do things on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel on Tippecanoe Herbs. I do a lot of lessons on my Instagram. I have tons and tons of lessons that I've done with Chance over on his channel. On the Interverse channel, we did like a whole series on astroherbalism, where we went through all of the different signs and many plants that are applied into these signs. And so we're talking about qualitative energetics that are on a macro level too, which is really cool. And also symbolism and story. That was really fun. And so there's plenty of stuff out there, free stuff that you'll be able to get into. And then also, if you're like, maybe I'm interested in working with Kyle as in his tuning, or the other ways that you've been talking about working with people. That's another thing that I do too. You can find consultations online, and I work with people all around the world all the time. It's really fun. That's really cool about working, with the internet and stuff like that. And of course I really like doing things in person. This is like, I'm a very local guy. I enjoy my local sphere. I enjoy talking to people and looking them in the eye. So if you ever are in Wisconsin or Southeast Wisconsin, Milwaukee, come find my shop in Milwaukee and come say hi and meet me. There's always people that are listening to podcasts, these really cool podcasts like the ones that you have, the one that you're hosting right now, that are like, hey, I heard you on this. And I'm like, whoa, cool. Nice. Now I know that we can already bypass a lot of the, I wonder if I could tell this joke or say this one thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're already entering at a level of truth where we're like, okay, we get it, bro. And so that's always really cool too. Thank you so much for asking about that.
Nice. And are you going to be at Bearfest this year?
I'm not sure. I think so, but I'm definitely going to be at the Elementals Gathering, and that's coming up in maybe by the time this is out, it's already done. But and that'll be really cool. That's Topher's thing, and that's at the same land, and there's going to be a lot of cool things there. So I'm doing that, and I got a couple other conference gigs this year. I'll be teaching at the Great Lakes Herb Fair in Michigan. I'll be teaching at the Good Medicine Confluence in New Mexico, which is going to be really cool. That's a really fun conference, because that is like the fringe of herb conferences, and it's really, really wild. Like the people who are
when is that one?
That's in October. It's actually the second week of October. Yeah, it's the second week of October, and
it's in New Mexico. Make it back for that one too. Well, and Isaac's family is from his dad's family's from New Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's in Albuquerque, which is like their Ghost Ranch, just north of Albuquerque, and Anyway, or sorry, just north of what's the other one, Santa Fe, but yeah, lots
Santa
of alchemists and weirdos and like the wildest herbalists out there that are like, their topics will never be able to be considered for other conferences, or all getting together, and that's the really fun one. I really
that's
like
cool. Yeah, that's right up Isaac's alley.
I'm gonna have to make a drive out there. That sounds awesome. It's probably in my dad's old, like where he grew up was like north of Santa Fe somewhere. So
yeah,
weird how
funny. I know. Yeah, well, I love everything you're doing, Kyle. And yeah, it's such a good, I actually love that you've got like the shop, like you've got a brick and mortar store, you do things in person. Cause I feel like in this day and age, like the internet's a blessing and a curse, and it's great that we can do things and connect with people worldwide. But I think we have kind of lost that, where you can go somewhere and like get a feel for the place and like, have like a home base or like this place that you work out of and see people in person. Cause like you said, it's a different experience when you're in person. So we've definitely got a great excuse to visit Milwaukee now when we're back in the States.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. You know that, put your hands down on the market table and you're like, this is my space. I'm grounded here.
Yeah.
And, people could come and go, but you're just like, phew.
Yeah.
It feels really good. So I want to encourage everybody out there too, that's like into the internet and doing their things, just to remember that. And, get out there with the plants that are growing 500 feet from where you sleep, and put yourself on the ground next to them and ground into that same position, where you're like, this is my place. Just like it's in the same place that this plant is growing. Like, why would it be here? I wonder, it might have something to do with what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And put aside, keep like a little market fund, and just always, anytime you see a farmer's market or something going on, just go browse around, because you'll never know. You might run into Kyle over here doing his magic stuff, and, other practitioners and things. There's always some really good nuggets that you find at these markets that you won't find anywhere else. And it's really that in-person experience. You just can't recreate online. We can echo it. We can talk about it. We can, make recordings about it, but yeah, get into the experience, and just, that's part of living life fully for me. So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed connecting with both of you. I love your energy. I know that when we meet someday, we'll be right up there as friends. So let's do that.
Looking forward to it, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kyle.
My pleasure. Ciao.
Thanks for tuning in to the Natural AF podcast, where we explore holistic healing modalities, mindsets, and methods that reconnect us to nature and our natural state of being.
If something resonated, share this episode and see the show notes for our guest links, as well as all of our discount codes for our aligned affiliates and Natural Art Form, where we handcraft a range of organic, natural remedies to help support your body's natural healing abilities and help support the show.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a few seconds to leave us a rating and review. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, hit the like button and drop us a comment, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates.
We're not here to conform. We're here to remember what's real. So step into your power, be curious, and be natural AF.